Somewhere along your spiritual journey, something unexpected happened. After all the meditations, the breakdowns, the breakthroughs, there it was, a powerful awakening. You saw through the noise, the illusions, the endless chase, and for a moment, it felt like everything made sense. But then, the spark began to fade. Not suddenly, quietly, like someone dimmed the light inside you. You didn't crash, you just stopped. Stopped caring about the things you once obsessed over. Stopped chasing goals that once felt urgent. A strange numbness took over. Not dramatic, just persistent. You thought enlightenment would ignite a fire, but instead, it left you staring at the ceiling, wondering why everything feels so empty. This is the paradox no one warns you about. We expect spiritual awakening to fill us with passion and purpose. But for many, especially the introspective seekers, it does the opposite. It strips everything away. Not to punish you, but to make space. What you're feeling isn't wrong. It's the beginning of something deeper, a sacred unraveling of everything that wasn't truly you. For most of your life, motivation came from the outside. You wanted to be someone, successful, admired, respected. You had goals, checklists, 5-year plans, and a version of yourself you were trying to become. This drive wasn't necessarily fake. It was just built on the identity you inherited, the expectations you absorbed, the mask you wore. Jung called this the persona, the social self, the role you play to function in the world. But after awakening, that mask starts to fall, and without it, the things that used to move you, status, approval, recognition, stop working. You didn't lose your drive. You lost the version of you that needed that kind of fuel. Suddenly, the motivational playlists don't inspire you, and your dream board from 2021 looks like a stranger's life. This disconnection isn't laziness or failure. It's your psyche rejecting everything inauthentic. The ego used to steer the ship. Now, it's confused, adrift, without a map. That's why you can't push yourself the way you used to. Your system is rebooting, and your old motivations aren't compatible with your new operating system. Carl Jung never romanticized awakening. He didn't describe it as a blissful escape into light, but as a confrontation with darkness. He said, enlightenment doesn't come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that sounds poetic, until you actually live it. Because true awakening doesn't just expand your awareness, it dismantles your identity. The person you thought you were, the one who had a role, a plan, a purpose, starts to die. Not physically, but psychologically. It's a death of meaning, of structure, of all the frameworks that once gave your life coherence. Goals, relationships, timelines, they collapse. And what's left behind is a silence that feels more like a void. But this is exactly what Jung understood. Awakening isn't the final destination. It's the death before rebirth. It's where the ego loses its grip, not because it's bad, but because it's incomplete. The pain you're feeling is the collapse of the familiar. And in that collapse, there is sacred space, space for the self to emerge. The deeper you that was always waiting beneath the surface of who you were taught to be. After the psychological death comes a phase almost no one talks about. The void. It's the strange, silent in-between where the old self is gone, but the new self hasn't arrived. You're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. Jung knew this space intimately. He understood it as a necessary part of the individuation process, the sacred pause between destruction and creation. But in our hyperproductive culture, this stillness is mistaken for failure. If you're not hustling, you're seen as stuck. If you're not striving, you're called lazy. But what you're actually experiencing is a deep inner reset. You're not lost. You're in transition. Your psyche is retreating inward, recalibrating, preparing to rebuild something more real. It's uncomfortable. It's disorienting. You can't explain it to people around you because it doesn't fit any obvious category. You're not depressed in the clinical sense. You're not broken. You're dissolving, melting down the ego's illusions to make space for the self. And though this phase feels endless, it's one of the most sacred parts of the journey. One of the greatest traps after awakening is the temptation to escape it all, to drift away, detach, and call it spiritual. This is what Jung would later recognize as spiritual bypassing. It's when you use spiritual insight to avoid the uncomfortable realities of life. Instead of engaging with them more honestly, you convince yourself that nothing matters, that everything is illusion, so why bother? You stop feeling, stop caring, stop participating, But this isn't enlightenment, it's dissociation wrapped in sacred language. Jung warned that the self doesn't want to float above life. It wants to live through you. It wants to incarnate, to touch the world, to transform it from within. When you disconnect, you confuse detachment with numbness. True detachment comes with presence, not avoidance. The self doesn't reject the world. It redefines your role in it. And to embody that role, you have to return from the void with a new kind of engagement, one rooted not in performance, but in truth. If you linger in bypassing too long, you miss the very transformation your soul came here to embody. Jung had a powerful word for what happens after awakening, the phenomenon where something turns into its opposite. It's not just a poetic idea, it's a psychological law. When the pendulum swings too far in one direction, nature pulls it back to restore balance. After a life of ego-driven striving, chasing goals, status, success, your inner pendulum swings the other way, into stillness, silence, surrender. You go from I must do everything to why do anything at all. And this reversal is not regression, it's alchemy. Just like a caterpillar dissolves into goo before becoming a butterfly, your old identity must break down before something new can form. It feels like chaos, but it's sacred chemistry at work. This inner dissolution is where the real transformation happens, not through hustle or control, but through allowing. And yes, the ego panics here. It wants structure, direction, productivity. But the self whispers, let go. I'm building something deeper. You are not failing, you are fermenting. The soul is cooking something ancient inside the silence. Let it eventually, something subtle begins to stir beneath the stillness. A quiet flicker of energy, not the old fire of ambition, but a new kind of motivation. It doesn't rush in like a lightning bolt. It doesn't roar. It whispers. At first, it might feel like a gentle nudge to move, to create, to reconnect, not because you should, but because something inside you wants to. This is soul-led motivation. It doesn't come from fear, urgency, or ego. It comes from alignment. You're no longer chasing success or validation. You're responding to what feels true. Jung called this the emergence of the self, not as a theory, but as a living inner compass. When this part of you begins to guide your life, everything shifts. You're not hustling to prove your worth. You're expressing something sacred. You don't need a grand plan. You need presence. This new motivation is rooted in resonance, not resistance. It's quieter, but deeper. And unlike ego-fueled energy, it doesn't burn you out. It builds you from the inside out. As the self begins to guide your life, you enter what Carl Jung called the symbolic life, a way of living that's no longer driven by logic or societal expectations, but by inner resonance, imagery, and meaning. You stop asking, what should I do? And begin asking, what's quietly calling me? Instead of following plans, you follow patterns, synchronicities, dreams, gut feelings. You notice how life speaks in symbols, and those symbols become your compass. This isn't fantasy, it's soul-level intelligence. The self doesn't speak in commands, it speaks in currents. And when you learn to trust that current, your actions feel guided, not forced. You might feel pulled to create, serve, heal, teach, not out of obligation, but because your entire being says yes. The life you begin to build from this space may look ordinary on the outside, but it's infused with depth. You're no longer trying to dominate life, you're participating with it. Ambition doesn't disappear, it transforms into devotion, from proving to expressing, from surviving to embodying. This is what it means to live from the self. This new motivation doesn't shout, it hums. It doesn't demand attention, it quietly pulls you forward. It's not driven by fear, deadlines, or external pressure. It's born from wholeness, from the integration of shadow, the surrender to stillness, the trust in your own inner timing. This kind of motivation doesn't burn out because it's not built on performance, it's built on presence. You begin to notice that you're creating without trying to impress. You're choosing peace over productivity, honesty over approval. The need to prove yourself fades, replaced by a deeper desire to be real. And what's most powerful about this new energy is how sustainable it is. You're no longer dragged by the fear of missing out or by the chase for validation. Instead, you're anchored in something ancient, yourself. Jung would say, this is the moment when life becomes an expression of your soul, not your mask. You do less, but what you do matters more. You move slower, but your steps carry truth. The old fire is gone, but in its place is a steady inner flame that doesn't flicker with every gust of wind. What you're experiencing now, the emptiness, the quiet, the loss of old motivation, is not the end of your spiritual awakening. It's the threshold to something far deeper, the true journey of becoming. Carl Jung never promised an easy path. He warned that awakening is a process of continuous transformation, a dance between light and shadow, death and rebirth. This stage, where you feel lost between worlds, is actually a sacred rite of passage. It's where the soul sheds its old skin to reveal a new, more authentic self. You're not trying to get your old drive back, you're discovering a new one, rooted in wholeness, truth, and presence. This motivation doesn't depend on external success or validation. It arises naturally from living in alignment with your deeper self. If this message resonates with you, know that you're not alone on this path. This is just the beginning of your real awakening, the unfolding of a life lived not just in awareness, but in soulful embodiment. The old story ends here, and your true story begins.